Welcome everybody to CEU Executive MBA Stockholm Copenhagen Open Day. My name is Thomas Lamel and I will guide you through this evening. At first, we will have some welcoming remarks from Advantage Austria from Mr. Martin Glatz, the commercial counselor here in Stockholm, followed by the program presentation done by me. You'll have the opportunity to meet the current participant, Daniele De La Renzo. He's here in Stockholm on site. You'll have the opportunity to enjoy a keynote presentation by Professor Sofia Barranier, and at the end, we'll have a Q&A session for any questions that might occur. Please feel free to use the chat box in the Zoom. I will collect your questions for the Q&A session in the end. Without further ado, I would like to thank our host here in Stockholm, Advantage Austria Stockholm, and I would like to give the floor to Martin Glatz, the commercial counselor.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to address you all, say hello. As you so kindly said, I'm the head of Advantage Austria Nordics, actually. So out of Stockholm, we are covering all Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark. Recently too, we have offices in all those countries. The main office, the hub, as we like to call it, is here. So it's a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Thank you very much.
The night started very early here in Stockholm.
It's dark
2:30 exactly. So we're approaching midnight, aren't we? Almost. I'm very curious myself to hear about the programs you're offering. Very happy, of course, to have Vienna as the seat of the Central European University. Whenever you are here, you're more than welcome. You have some private routes here, I've heard, when it comes to Stockholm, should make it easier for you to pass by every now and then. And of course, to all of you who are interested in Sweden, in the Nordics, from a business point of view, always happy to connect with us here at Advantage Austria, the commercial section of the Austrian Embassy. That's what we are here formally. Our doors here on Karlaplan are always open. So please call on us whenever you feel that you need some information on the markets up here in the Nordics. Thanks a lot and enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much for these kind welcoming remarks. I will move on to the program presentation. The problem you're facing right now in the current economy and the current political world is the question, is an MBA still worth it? It's a very individual question you would need to ask yourself, because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we are witnessing fundamental transformations in the world in a century. In 2008, we've had a big financial crisis. In 2015, we've seen a big refugee crisis. And right now we are in the middle of the biggest pandemic in over a century. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place. Some of them are positive and some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. So the key question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? And the next obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? In the last year, we've seen an explosion of online education, and I'll show you why we believe our MBA is worth it. So if you're interested in further education, you usually start searching for an MBA in the city you live in. What you tend to find is mostly a pretty standard, a vanilla MBA curriculum. The faculty who are delivering the program are pretty much local. And so is the student body. The number of international students in such programs is relatively low. Some programs in Western Europe, in Switzerland, the UK, and Germany can be quite expensive, starting at 80,000 or 100,000 euro for your tuition. But a local program allows you not to leave your job. If you contrast that with the top business schools in the world, they often have a very differentiated, very mission-driven curriculum. They offer a certain expertise, they offer a certain mission in their curriculum and a certain perspective. And because of the full-time format, their student body is actually international, very international. but you're leaving the labor market for 1 or even 2 years, which is another additional financial burden for you. And speaking of financial burden, these programs are rather expensive at more than 100 or 120,000 euros. And another thing that you might need to consider is that you may have to move your family to the MBA location. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of two worlds. There is no work interruption, thanks to the practical and flexible modular format. I will talk about it later. The Executive MBA is mission-driven. I will talk about the Executive MBA for the open world philosophy later. We have an international student body because of the modularity of the program. According to the Times Higher Education, we are the second most international university in the world. So participants can fly in, can fly out, which is a major advantage of the program. Just to introduce you to some of our faculty members, one of our faculty members you'll have the opportunity to meet tonight via Zoom, but let's start with economics, for example, Mark Kaufmann, an expert in applied theory with a PhD from Harvard University. Or if you're new to finance, Joy Jan is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students tell us how she's just uniquely gifted in explaining complex financial concepts. The course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Professor Miklos Koren, one of the leading scholars in his field in Europe with a Harvard PhD. Or Maciej Kieślowski, our faculty director, and with a GSD degree from Yale, an MBA from INSEAD, an MBA from Princeton, an expert on regulation and non-market strategy. Or Professor Aisosenius with a PhD from Florida. She's an expert on marketing and especially emotional marketing. Or if you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton University. For leadership, Austin, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents, he will lead the way. For strategy, you'll have Yusuf, who has taught in more than 40 countries and advises leading Fortune 500 companies. And last but not least, for innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds the prestigious EU Jean Monnet Chair. Some examples of our visiting faculty, Professor Christian Selos, an expert on innovation from Stanford University, Miklos Savary, a digital marketing expert from Columbia University, Omar Hernandez from Berkeley, Hui Chen from the University of Zurich, or Dr. Milena Nikolova from Behavior Smart. She's their Chief Behavior Officer. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 10-module program. The dates you can see on the screen right now are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and private family activities based on these dates. As you can see, we have 3 modules in the first year. That's the row above. 4 in the second year, it's the row in the center, and 3 in the third year, which gives you flexibility and a balance in your life. As you might have noticed, we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like May 1st, November 1st, or August 15th, when it's easier for you to take time off and there's no work disruption with your job. In the summer, which is the column in the center, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place on our second campus in Budapest, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world that we invite to teach your classes. So one day, eventually, there will come the day when you finish with us and you join the CEU alumni from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university, and this is being reflected in our alumni network as well. The alumni network consists of more than 18,000 elite professionals around the world, and it's you can rely on an active network on every continent. Basically, wherever you go in the world, we have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Wherever you are, you'll find CEU alumni to interact with, to network with, and to make new friends with. And this is a network that you can count on. And it's one of the key assets that we have. So the question is, how are we even able to offer such a high quality program at only 29,000 euro of tuition? There's a simple answer, and the answer lies in our benefactor and founder, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So what does the executive MBA for the open world mean? What makes CEU unique? First of all, when we talk about open world, we mean skepticism towards hierarchies, towards dogmas, towards privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in a context of the composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating such a successful program, and for us, it's not just an empty marketing catchphrase. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives and fake news that create the polarization in our current societies these days. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. Just today, we have announced a new fellowship with the so-called Female Leaders Fellowship with the Female Factor organization to empower businesswomen to join our program. And it's just one of our numerous fellowships that we have in place. I will talk about them later. And the way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join MBA or executive MBA programs. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses and resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. They are positive change agents. Whatever the background is, whatever the profession is, if you're coming from the corporate world, if you're coming from the NGO, if you're coming from entrepreneurship, if you're coming from the public sector, or even arts and culture, we have all these people in our current cohorts, and everybody can be a positive change agent. So what does the CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? Currently, we have, in the current cohort, we have 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including at least 3 years of any kind of leadership or a managerial experience. As you can see from the background in the image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate discussion and interaction. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs. And our mission, our academic mission, is we want to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the strategic level. So we offer, of course, a hybrid participation. We offer top quality online experience. Every participant can choose to join online if traveling is inconvenient or if there's any health travel restrictions or underlying health conditions, whatever. If you want to choose to join online, you are free to join in a hybrid setting. We have heavily invested in studio-grade microphones, capturing lecturers and all participants, because for us, the learning experience isn't just a one-way street from the lecturer to the participant. It's also a communication from the participant to the lecturer and among your fellows, among participants. We have invested in large screens and high-quality cameras. We have created physical virtual backgrounds, breakout rooms for support teams. The support teams are the teams that you will be working in as far as your team assignments are concerned. And we handpick those, we hand select those support teams based on the diversity in your current cohort. You will not be placed in a support team with people with the same linguistic background, with this coming from the same country, coming from the same industry, because we want to expose you, proactively expose you to as much diversity as possible, because this is where we think, at least, where the learning experience kicks in. If you're exposed to new ideas, new strategies, new decision-making processes, new techniques and new styles from people of other industries, coming from other cultures and other languages, this is where you start to learn. If you're in a group with people from the same country, the same industry, the same language, you would basically, tell the same stories, but you wouldn't share any new, you wouldn't get any new information. We have created personalized virtual backgrounds, as you can see from this picture. You can not only see the names and the faces of those people, which is very important for assessing those contributions in class, but you can also see the color codes and the support teams those people belong to. We have 360-degree peer review in our in the program, which means you're not only assessed by your lecturer, your teacher, you will be assessed by all of your fellow participants, and you will assess, vice versa, all your other fellows as well. So the intention is to have good interaction in class, quality debate, and you will be assessed based on that contribution. And of course, we offer high quality individual support on every level of your journey with us, from the level of being just interested in the program, to actually applying for the program, to being a current student, to becoming an alumni, or to be an alumni on the long run. We offer high quality individual support, and we're always here for you. As I already said, this is sometimes the most important question. Tuition is only 29,000 euro, thanks to our financial endowment. We're passing on this financial advantage to our participants through cheaper tuition, through lower tuition and scholarships and fellowships, because our mission is to democratize higher education, and we don't want to price people out of the program because of their origins or their lower income. As I already said, online option is always available. You can participate online if travel is inconvenient, or if you have any private reasons or travel restrictions. In order to defray your other costs of the program, we have special rates negotiated with partner hotels in Budapest and Vienna, and we have negotiated discounts with Lufthansa Group and Austrian Airlines to get you to Vienna and Budapest cheaper. The tuition that I mentioned, the 29,000 euro, is for the whole program and includes all the credits. So I would like to invite you to join the open world with your application. The application deadline is March 27th. However, I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible through our website. Everything is done online. Why am I encouraging you to apply as soon as possible? Because we have a first come, first served policy. And the sooner you apply, the sooner you're able to apply for scholarships and to reserve your study seat. Of course, you're always welcome to book an individual one-on-one session with me. If you have any questions about your applications or the application process or your documents or the scholarships, I'm happy to advise you on your application and to advise you on our financial support. So I think it's one thing to hear about the program from us, from the program office, because everybody here in the program office is passionately committed to this program. We really believe in the strength of this executive MBA. But I think it's another thing to hear about the program from people who are actually doing the program right now, and who can tell you stories from the front line, basically from the academic front line, and tell their stories and their motivation. And I'm extremely happy to introduce to you tonight Daniele De La Renzo. He's living here in Stockholm and working for Ericsson. He's in charge of strategy and operations, group function, legal affairs and compliance here at Ericsson Stockholm. Daniele, if you would please join us. And if you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your motivation, why you joined CEU back then.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks, Thomas, for inviting me, and good evening, everybody. Daniele De La Renzo. I'm originally from Italy, but I've been living in Stockholm for, I would say, quite some time, almost 10 years with a gap here and there. I bring about 15 years of experience in business transformation and change management. As Thomas mentioned, I'm currently working at Ericsson, but before joining Ericsson, I had the opportunity to work for a couple of consulting companies, and my previous employer before Ericsson was Adidas. So I've been basically traveling around for living and for business for quite some time. I've been living in 6 countries so far, including, of course, Italy and Sweden. And I basically spent quite a long time thinking about what executive MBA I wanted to apply and to join. So I believe that the couple of years before starting the CEU Executive MBA, I've been looking around in the market, what were basically the options available to me according to the requirement that I had, first of all, to advance from a professional perspective, but at the same time, to get the opportunity to interact with a very broad range of professionals, if you want. So CEU Executive MBA basically offers this. So the idea is that the first day that I met my cohort, I clearly realized that the level of internationalism was very high, but at the same time, also the level of backgrounds and experiences that you wouldn't normally find in any other master's degree or executive MBA, because one of the key assets, I would say, of CEU is really to combine people coming from a number of different backgrounds from a professional perspective, and also from a personal perspective. And during the discussions that we had during the first few modules that I had the pleasure to participate, of course, I could add value and contribute to those conversations with my business transformation and change management experience, but I could really get a lot of value, in particular from those participants with a financial background, but most importantly, those people who don't have a very specific business background, because they have over 10 years of experience typically in the NGO or in the not-for-profit environment, and that's absolutely value adding. Then one additional thing that is absolutely fantastic from my perspective is the modular structure of this program. I would have not been able to participate in a full-time classic MBA program simply because stepping aside from work, when you have over 15 years of experience is more and more challenging. But the format that CEU offers is really great, because over 10 modules, they're, yes, full immersion, very intensive, but in 10 modules, you can really upskill yourself and really go through all the key standard topics of a typical MBA. And in addition, there is a, I would say, large selection of electives that, of course, every single student can really pick and advance in those subjects, in those topics that he or she is most interested in. So I think that probably I spoke too much.
No, you basically sold the program already. I would like to point out some things that you referred to. I think one important part is you mentioned the modular structure, which allows you to have work-life balance and to actually leave your job. It's not my intention to badmouth other programs. You just need to be aware that part-time or full-time programs, as strong as they are academically, they do not offer you the opportunity to stay on your job. So if you're moving to the US, for example, to do an executive MBA at one of these universities, which are academically great, this would mean you're leaving your job, which is another financial burden because of your living costs on site and your tuition. But CEU Executive MBA allows you to stay on your job and to do the modules around holidays. So it's easy for you to have a long weekend over November 1st, May 1st, August 15th, etc. The second part that you mentioned, and I think this is really where our strength kick in, is the diversity, and not just diversity with regard to nationalities. I've already mentioned that we are the second most international university. So we have in the current cohort people flying in from 5 continents despite of the corona pandemic. And I think this shows how much trust there is in our program and how much commitment there is in our program. But it also shows how international the program is. We have people flying in from as far away as Vancouver, Chicago, but also India, South Africa, the Middle East. We have even 2 Australians in the program, and of course, Europe, where traveling is of course easier in these times. But speaking of diverse backgrounds, it's not just about, you know, a brochure that shows like as many as nationalities as possible. It's not just about that. It's about different backgrounds, because we have people in the program, we have artists in the program, we have people who studied the piano, but we also have people, medical engineers, big data experts. We have finance people in the program. We have serial entrepreneurs in the current cohort. So people from human rights and environmental activism. So it's a really fitting program for people who are not coming from the traditional business background, but also it's a good addition to people who are coming from the traditional corporate background, because it offers so much more perspective to them than just the corporate view. Daniele, I think you mentioned everything that people could be interested in. Feel free to reach out to Daniele on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer your questions if you need to reach out to a current participant. Of course, you can also reach out to me and my colleagues if you have any questions about the program itself. Thank you, Daniele, for joining us tonight. I would like to move on to the academic part of tonight, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Professor Sofia Barranier tonight. She's a professor of macroeconomics with a PhD from LSE, and she will talk about technological change and inequality. Thank you for joining us, Sofia. The floor is yours.
Sorry, so I was muted. Thank you for this introduction, and thanks for having me at the CEU Open Day, Executive MBA. Sorry, I can't. Okay. And I will be talking about technological change and inequality. This is the topic that most of my research focuses on. So what technological change and how it will impact the future of work is a central policy question. There are fears that many jobs are going to become obsolete, that machines are going to take over our jobs, or robots. And here is a cover from the New Yorker magazine from 2017, which shows this dire future that some are scared of. There are some academic papers which try to estimate or predict what fraction of employment is at risk of being automated. So one study is from the US. This was done by Frey and Osborne from 2017, and they predicted that about 47% of US employment is at the very high risk of being automated in the next 2 decades. Nedalowski and Quintini from 2018 draw a slightly less scary picture, saying that 14% of jobs are highly automatable and 32% of them face substantial changes. How do they conduct these studies? They basically look at what are the tasks that are done in these jobs and try to understand, using current information on technologies, which are the tasks that can be easily automated or learned by artificial intelligence and so on. Now, the problem is that it's very hard to predict how technology is going to evolve in the future, but there is a consensus that all jobs will be affected. And this is what brings on this technology anxiety. So I would like to read this quote to you, which I think expresses the concern of many people very well. So the number of jobs lost to more efficient machines is only part of the problem. What worries many job experts more is that automation may prevent the economy from creating enough new jobs. Throughout industry, the trend has been to bigger production with a smaller workforce. Many of those losses in factory jobs have been countered by an increase in the service industries or in office jobs. But automation is beginning to move in and eliminate office jobs too. In the past, new industries hired far more people than those they put out of business. But this is not true of many of today's new industries. Today's new industries have comparatively few jobs for the unskilled or the semi-skilled, just the class of workers whose jobs are being eliminated by automation. So I think this quote really summarizes how many people feel today. Now, the interesting thing is that this is a quote from the 1961 issue of Time magazine. So this shows you that this technology anxiety is not a new phenomenon at all. People were having the same doubts, policymakers, academics, and so on had the same worries, almost 60 years ago as today. So what is so good about technological change if we're so worried about it, about its effect on technology? Well, economists agree by and large that technological change is the key driver of growth, and is the source of the sustained improvement in the living standards that all of us have enjoyed, or many of us have enjoyed. So how does this work? Well, new technology is developed. It is adopted in order to lower costs. The fact that they lower costs means that prices of goods and services are going to fall. The lower prices means that the disposable income or the purchasing power of income that individuals have increases. That implies that they will demand more goods and more services than they did before, which can lead to an increase in labor demand. Okay, so if we look at technology in this way, technology is something that is good. It's going to make production more efficient. It's going to make goods and services more affordable. It's going to make people richer, and it's also going to eventually link, have a spillover effect and increase labor demand by increasing the demand for goods and services which are produced using labor. So what is the problem? Well, the problem is that the gains from technological improvements are often not distributed evenly. So it can have huge implications for inequality. And technological changes often bias towards certain groups of workers or certain industries. So let me give you some examples that have started a long time ago, but they're still ongoing today. The first one is structural transformation. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this, that there has been a shift out of agriculture towards manufacturing, and then from manufacturing towards services. And this process started as early as the middle of the 19th century, okay, and still ongoing today. The second type of change that is linked to technological changes is what is called skill-based technological change. And this describes the phenomenon that happened in most developed countries since the middle of the 20th century, which is that the supply of college-educated workers increased, and at the same time, also their relative wage increased, which is something that is quite unusual from an economics point of view, that you have the supply of something increasing together with the price of that thing. And finally, a more recent phenomenon is polarization, or the hollowing out of employment. And this describes the phenomenon that started around depends on which country we look at. It started around the 1950s or somewhere between 1950s and 1980s. And this describes the phenomenon that middle wage jobs are disappearing, and at the same time, low and high paid jobs are increasing, both in terms of employment and in terms of relative wages. So one question that we can ask, and we do ask ourselves, is what's coming next? So let me just show you quickly what I mean when I talk about structural transformation and these other skill-based technological change and polarization. So structural transformation, as I said, is the shift from agriculture to manufacturing and to services. And this started as early as the middle of the 19th century. So here, what I show you in a graph is employment, the number of people employed in three broad sectors in the United States between 1840 and 2050. Okay, so the green part shows you the people employed in agriculture, or the fraction of people. The blue shows you the fraction of people employed in manufacturing, and the orange or beige one shows you the people employed in services. And what this graph shows you is this huge shift out of agriculture, right? So in the middle of the 19th century, there were more than 60% of the people were working in agriculture. And by the 2015, this was down to 1 or 2%. Okay, if you look at manufacturing, you see at the beginning and at the end, you have kind of the same, around 15%, 18% of employment in manufacturing. But in the middle of this graph, so early 20th century, 1940, this was more around 30%. Okay, so manufacturing first increased and then decreased. Whereas people employed in services almost continuously increased. And now it's more than 80% of the population is working in services. Okay, this process has a huge impact on people who spend their whole life working in manufacturing, and then all of a sudden they realize that there are no more jobs left for them, right? Now, this process is linked, like most of the economic profession agrees that this is largely attributed to sectoral differences in productivity growth, okay? Namely that productivity growth was the fastest in agriculture in the 19th century, was growing faster than other sectors. And this increasing productivity growth meant that this sector could free up labor, and that labor could go to other sectors that had a slower productivity growth. Okay? And then also manufacturing has faster productivity growth than services. And this means that employment is slowly shifting out of this sector as well. There is also a role for some preferences here. And namely, we can observe that individuals, as they get richer, they spend a larger share of their income on services rather than on food or manufacturing goods. And this is true also of countries, right? So if we look at it across countries, or we look at one country over time, we see that countries spend a larger fraction of their income on services as they get richer. The demand for services, the relative demand increases. And this will also mean that they will need more and more people to produce in services in order to fulfill this increasing demand. Now let me briefly show you what happened to skill supply and wages. Actually, here I'm only going to show you what happened to the relative wages of workers with different skills. So here you see again US data between the middle of the 20th century until today, or a few years ago, and each of these different colored curves shows you the real wage of people relative to 1963 for different education levels. Okay, so we have the lowest line are high school dropouts, and we have high school graduates, some college, bachelor's degree, and graduate degree. And you have it for men and women separately. What you can see here, what is striking is that these wages largely evolved together from the early 60s until the early 70s. And then in the early 70s, we can start to notice a fanning out of these wages. And namely, it's only the highest educated individuals who are gaining, right? So from whatever processes are happening from the 1970s onwards, all of the gains are going to the highest educated workers, and the low educated workers are losing in terms of real wages. Now, I don't show this here, but the employment or the population, the fraction of people with different education level in the population shows us that there are more and more people who have a graduate degree, who have some college, who have a bachelor's degree, and so on. So again, here, these changes in the skill supply went together with changes in their relative wages. And this process, or this phenomenon, is largely attributed to what is called skill-biased technological change, which is a type of technological change that favors high-skilled workers rather than low-skilled workers. And the final phenomenon that I wanted to show you is job polarization. Okay, and this is this hollowing out of the labor market. And here you see changes in occupational employment shares among working age adults between 1980 and 2015. And here you see basically different occupational categories ranked from lowest paid on the left. These are personal services, cleaning and protective service workers, etc., to highest paid workers, which are managers and executives. And what you see on the vertical axis is how much did the employment share each of these groups change in this period. And what we see is that by and large, the bottom increased the employment share, the top increased the employment share, and the middle lost. Okay, and this process is attributed to routinization or task-biased technological change, which is a form of technological change that substitutes for workers who do a lot of routine tasks. They substitute these workers with machines, and at the same time, they make workers performing abstract tasks more efficient at their work. But it does not really affect manual task productivity. Okay, so I told you about all of these things, and you see that they're happening at the same time. And each of them has a different explanation. One is related to sectoral differences, the other one is related to skill differences in technological change, and the last one is to task differences. So what is the true nature of technological change? Now, this is a big problem for economists because technologies are not directly observed. So we either extract them as residuals from an accounting framework, right? We see output, we take and we can measure inputs, and we assume some kind of production function, and then we can back out what is technology and what happened to technology. That's one way of thinking about technology. Another is that we proxy for them with something else that we think is correlated with technologies. Okay, so this can be computers, right? Or this can be how much routine content the job has, and so on. But our answer to what technological change looks like is going to depend on how we cut the data. Are we looking at sectors? Are we looking at skills? Are we looking at occupations? And what I'm working on is that I look at this data and I see that these three processes seem to be intimately connected. Okay, so if you here, bear with me, this graph might be a little bit complicated at a first glance, but here we have the data employment again in the US cut along both where the individuals work, whether in the goods sector, this is the first column, or the service sector, this is the second column. Are they low educated, that's in the top, or high educated, that's in the bottom? And then each of these colored curves gives us the share of an occupation. Okay, the blue one, occupation one, are the abstract high paying occupations. The red one, occupation two, these are the routine occupations. And the yellow one are the manual occupations. And what we see is that most of the action is happening in the goods sector to the low educated workers, and in the services sector to the high educated workers, right? So it's not uniformly happening across sectors or across occupations or across education level, but there seems to be some connection between all of these processes. And these technological changes have had huge impacts on welfare and inequality and will continue to do so. And this impact is going to be different depending on what the initial skills are of individuals, what their education is, how old they are, right? How much time do they have left on the labor market? How worth it is it for them to change their careers? And what their existing experiences in which sector and which occupation. So to evaluate how technological change or policy changes are going to impact these people, we need to have a framework where we can systematically evaluate this full impact depending on the skills, education, age, and experience of the workers. So that's exactly what I'm working on, where we basically augment the so-called task-based approach, which was pioneered by Arthur Levy and Mornane, where they state that occupations are basically a bundle of tasks, and to perform each task, the worker needs to have a specific skill. And technological change is going to substitute for some tasks and complement others. And so this framework had huge success empirically, and it can explain quite well the changes in the demand for skills, right? What we bring to this framework is that we say that, well, these occupations require a bundle of skills, not just a single one. So it's not just that you only supply your abstract cognitive knowledge if you're a manager, or you only provide your routine skills if you work in a factory, but you give all of your skills together. And this implies that we cannot price each skill independently, but we can only price the bundle of the skills that people bring to the labor market together. And this means that when technology changes, it doesn't only impact one set of skills, but it impacts who supplies their labor where, depending on what their skills are, It also impacts labor demand, and it impacts labor supply. It's going to impact equilibrium wages, and it's going to impact where people decide to start their career and how people can adapt. So how do we do this in practice? Okay, because we are really in this project, we really rely on the data. So we basically extract 3 types of skill requirements from occupational data, and skill endowments that individuals have from individual data. Okay, so we extract manual, interpersonal, and abstract skill requirements of different occupations, and we do this relying on the Occupational Information Network, where we use about 200 descriptors for over 500 occupations. And we take these descriptors and collapse them into these 3 categories, and then we calculate the skill requirements of five main sector occupation pairs. Okay, so we have here, I'm afraid I don't have a lot of time to go into the data, but what you see over here is that we have the heterogeneity within the goods sector, right, across different occupational categories, and also within the service sector. But then also, if you compare, for example, abstract occupations in the goods sector or with abstract occupations in the service sector, you see that there are differences, right? So they require a different abstract skill and a different interpersonal skill in this case, for example. And then to put some structure on the labor, on the endowment side, we look at the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, where they basically conduct tests of skills for young individuals. So they're 16 to 20 years old before their labor market experience. And we also extract for these people these 3 skills. And we have a lot of individuals. We basically represent them with 12 types. And again, what you see here is that, you know, people are very heterogeneous in all types of skills, okay? And these are not perfectly correlated. So it's not just that, you know, there are people who are better at everything and people who are worse at everything, but there are people, you know, who are very good in interpersonal skills, but not very good in abstract, and vice versa. And what I want to show you last here is that when we look at the data, what we do see is that individuals sort into sector occupations which have skill requirements that are similar to their initial endowment, okay? So this task-based approach does have a bite in the data, in the sense that we see that people who are have very high interpersonal skills, for example, they're more likely to go into service occupations than into goods occupations. And further, we see that over their lifetime, these individuals, they specialize further. So their initial choice of going into service sector, for example, gets more pronounced as they get older and acquire more skills in this framework, in these jobs. I think I'm pretty much out of time, but I just wanted to tell you that we build this big framework where we have, you know, individuals who are born with these multidimensional skills, and they make forward-looking decisions about where to work and whether to get education. And if there are changes in technologies that are unexpected, which is usually the case in the real world, this is going to create winners and losers. And our framework is it allows us to evaluate who are the winners and who are the losers and how we can help them. Okay, how we can, what policies can help people, navigate the changing technological aspect of the labor market, how we can help them with labor market policies or with retraining and so on. So just, I will leave you with the key takeaways, which is that, you know, technological change is important. It lets us live much better than our even our parents did, or our grandparents. But the gains from these technological improvements are not distributed evenly. And to understand, you know, how future technological change is going to impact workers, we need to have a comprehensive and flexible model. And at the heart of that, we need to have a model with multidimensional skills, which determine how people can, or how people want to allocate across different opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sofia. I would like to add Maciej Kieślowski, our faculty director, to this debate. He will act as a host, as a moderator, and will take on your questions from here, from the audience in Stockholm, or from Zoom people. Maciej, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. Warm greetings, and thank you so much, Zofia, for the fascinating talk. Now, I'm looking at for any questions from the audience, but let me take the advantage of being a moderator to maybe kick off the discussion. So, so I understand the policy implication, but in terms of in terms of this heterogeneity of skills, which is kind of very interesting because it kind of rigorously confirms what we kind of always implicitly suspect, that, you know, it's very difficult to have this, you know, we talk about these well-rounded managers and executives, yes, but they actually don't happen that often, yes, and it's a nice concept, but it's very difficult. You know, do you think there is a role for you know, kind of the programs and education that we focus on, the mid-career education, to kind of, you know, even out those skills later on in life? Because, like, in a sense, there is a question that skills are not given, yes? I mean, you can develop them, you can work on them. And do you think that there will be, that the data patterns that you see, would you expect that they will kind of bring more demand for education, continuous education, and education later in life? You know, MBA has always been that, but it's kind of an exception. Yes, I'm a lawyer by training, and you don't have mid-career law degrees, for example. Yes, almost none, or executive law degrees, and in many professions you don't. Yes, it's an exception, not a rule. Do you think this is, your data shows that it may change, or do you think it's not relevant?
I think that this is a very interesting question, and I think that education, and especially continuing education, is going to be very important, because with so one fear about new technological change is that it's going to be very rapid, and it will change what kind of skills are needed very quickly. And that means that people need to be ready to, you know, to change kind of what they know and what they want to do, and adapt. And I think like an executive MBA or also other types of later, you know, educational opportunities are very important for this. So I do think that this is important. Another thing that you know, people seem to agree on is that we know kind of what are the types of skills that are going to be, we expect what are the things that are going to be more demanded in the future. And these are cognitive skills and interpersonal skills. And so also in earlier education, it would be important to focus on these skills to you know, tell people how they can improve that. And I think, you know, this needs to be improved throughout probably the, you know, lifetime for the generations to come.
Yes, and an interesting interesting aspect of this is that you have, you know, the advancements in other social sciences, including psychology, which shows you that, like, many of those things which, you know, a few decades ago were considered kind of a myth, yes, a mystique of some kind, something that you are supposedly born with, are actually not. Yes, they are actually skills, and you can improve, you know, a host of you know, soft and interpersonal skills, just like you improve domain knowledge. Yes, so that's I think it's a parallel trend that, you know, when we talk about, because it's interesting, because when we talk about education, we often think about, we kind of maybe implicitly assume it's a fixed fixed product or fixed solution, but education has gained so much, abilities in both content and methods over the last decades. Yes.
I think now actually COVID speeded up the online education revolution in a way. So all these tools were there before, and I think this makes continued education much more affordable and accessible to many people, right? Who before couldn't say, okay, I'm going to leave my job and start working.
Exactly.
That you can do this, in the evening, on the weekends, in intensive, a few days per year, etc. So I think that's definitely education will have a huge role here.
Okay, changing gears maybe a little bit in terms of this. So basically, the data patterns that you are showing is basically a shift between various type of labor, but there is this distinct narrative that you mentioned in kind of popular press and popular culture of no work to be done at all. Yes, and I want to in the future, yes, of kind of idleness. Yes, what's your take on that?
So I think that's really a myth, because there is this, so David Otter calls this the O-ring theory, right? That every job, every occupation requires many different tasks, and technology usually is going to improve one task. And that doesn't mean that doing the other tasks is going to be less important. Instead, it's going to make doing the other task well and fast and efficiently more important, if anything. So technology is going to change the things that people do, but it's not going to replace people. So there will be always, new tasks that are going to be created because of these new technologies, and new technologies are going to make those tasks that they couldn't be automated or couldn't be, changed. They are going to make them more in demand rather than less, I think.
Yes, no. So I think that was very powerfully shown in your both in the data patterns, but also in kind of an implicit model that you showed, that basically there is no economic mechanism, as I understood your presentation, that is going to push people into idleness. Yes, because there's always some marginal benefit of doing something, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay, let me maybe ask one last question, which is, you talk about inequality as an effect of those changes. But what about inequality, and especially, things that Thomas Piketty and others are talking about, which is accumulation of capital, as a cause of this? Like, do you think this kind of emergence of this wealthy class of capitalists, which we didn't see, for much of the 20th century, at that economic power, is going to in itself be a factor influencing demands for jobs? So maybe we will not be idle, but maybe we all serve, at the pleasure of billionaires. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's, one. So I truly believe that technology is always going to make, on average, the world a better place. One issue is, the main issue is about redistribution, how we distribute the gains from this. Yeah. And as you were saying, I think the environment today is one where there's a lot of power, a lot of wealth in the hands of a few people, and workers are very fragmented and not organized into unions, and they don't have a lot of bargaining power. So one issue is exactly that. This is going to erode further. But now, in the recent years, we have seen a little bit of reversal in this trend. So we see that workers are trying to organize themselves more forcefully, and there are, companies as well. trying to, like, there is some kind of social responsibility that some companies seem to embrace and want to, adjust their policies in order to reflect these things better.
Well, thank you so much. This was a fascinating discussion, and hopefully for the participants a taste of CEU Executive MBA. Thomas, back to you.
Yeah, we're moving on to the last part of this event, to the Q&A session. I've collected your questions from the chat and from direct messages, which Maciej and I are happy to answer. Let's start with a question for you, Maciej, the elephant in the room. What about COVID, the situation? What about online participation? What about measures on site?
So, yes, I mean, it's our principle, our approach to the COVID situation is kind of, I think, illustrative of how we treat our executive fellows and our community members in general. So basically, we are, while we, as you mentioned in your presentation, we made the online option widely available, and we have technology that helps us deliver on this. We actually do everything in our power to keep this program for the most of participants, for everybody who wants to be on site, to be an on-site program. Because Sofia mentioned that there is this explosion of online education, and we are aware that people join CEU Executive MBA to actually have a more personalized, more two-way type of interaction and intellectual exchange. So how do we do it? Well, we test. We were one of the leaders, the first institution that unveiled antigen testing at a massive scaling here in Vienna more than a year ago. We of course have very rigorous safety protocols on campus, and all of this took, and also the modular program itself is frankly, and especially the fact that the program is slightly focused towards spring and summer. Our longest modules are in the spring and in the summer. When we did it, I won't say that this was like we predicted COVID. Yes, we did it mostly because these times of the year also happen to be kind of low intensity for work of our participants. But this was a very fortunate choice because a lot of this program is delivered during times when this epidemics is kind of weaker. There is some seasonality to this. And then the online option allows people for the fall and winter module to join online if they can't travel during those times, but they still benefit the vast majority of the program. They are, they enjoy on site. So this combination, I think, is our secret sauce.
Thank you very much. The next question I would like to take to answer myself, which is how does the application process look like? What are the application requirements? Let's start with the application requirements before we're diving into the process of application. The people we're looking for, the target group, are managers from various backgrounds with at least 8 years of work experience, of which 3 years are of leadership or managerial experience. You would need to have an undergraduate university degree, and proof of English must be provided unless your degree was fully taught in English or you're a native speaker, of course. Besides that, we would ask from you to upload a CV and a motivation letter, and assuming that you have all these documents, you can apply online. Once you completed and submitted your application, I will check it for completeness and correctness. Assuming that you meet all these criteria, we will invite you to MS Teams interview where one of our faculty members will assess you, will get to know you in 45 minutes based on a fixed questionnaire. So we're not playing mind games in that interview. It's just a very limited time frame that we have in order to get to know you, talk about your leadership style, about your work experience, about your motivation, about your background. Assuming that you pass this this phase, your case will be presented to a admission committee, because we're handpicking our participants, and everything is done in a very timely manner. So it only takes a couple of weeks from the time of submitting your application to receiving an admission decision, which again benefits your time management. Maciej, the next question is for you again. It's the question on if there are any exams and if there is a thesis.
There are exams, especially early in the program, but you know, the modules are the time where we really count every minute. And you know, when you come to the module, it's not to sit in an empty class and write an exam. So exams are moved outside the module. You do it online. You do them online during kind of a 10-day exam period, where you can basically choose a 2-hour slot of your choice, and you start an exam. You need to finish within a set time. You can't, you know, break it into multiple pieces, but like you do it at your own time slot. Now, most classes don't have exams because most classes are asking you to deliver projects. Projects are done in support teams in which we put you. So you need to work with people who are very different from you. That's the goal, that kind of put you outside of your comfort zone. And at the end of the program, there is also the so-called Capstone Project, which is your individual applied project where you are asked to basically select skills that you gained at CEU to practice. And that's our approach to thesis.
Thank you very much. I have received a very important question on financial support. If there is financial support, if there are any scholarships and fellowships, I would like to take this question because it's kind of my expertise to advise people on this. The clear answer is yes. We offer a variety of financial support. Let me break it down to you just to give you a better understanding of how we are managing these scholarships and fellowships. The first stream, the first option is the Open World Scholarship, which does not exclude people from the corporate world, but I'd say it attracts rather people coming from the NGO field and public sector. Why that? Because it aims at people who have a history, who have achievements in breaking down privileges, hierarchies, and dogmas aligned with our open society mission. And that often, not always, but often happens in NGO and in NGOs and the civil rights movement. But of course, you're not excluded to apply for the Open World Scholarship if you feel that you have contributed to the open society mission as well. The second option is the need-based scholarships, which are non-competitive. So you're not competing against other applicants in getting that fellowship, in getting that scholarship. You just need to convince us in order to get the need-based scholarship, and we only take into consideration your individual income situation and the country of residence you're living in, because it makes a difference if you're a marketing manager in Ukraine or in Germany on the same job level. Of course, it makes a financial difference when it comes to your income. The third option are merit-based country-specific fellowships, which are, again, very much aligned with our mission to promote open societies and to help groups of our society which have not been able to pursue higher education traditionally. So, for example, we have implemented international LGBTIQ fellowships. We have implemented international and regional fellowships for business women. We have implemented a fellowship for managers with a disability, for the Romani and Sinti minority, etc., etc. We have so many fellowships for so many countries and regions in place. So I would strongly encourage you to book a one-on-one consultation with me using the link that is provided in the chat box. If you want to get further advice on scholarships and fellowships, it would just not be possible to talk about all these fellowships in this open day session. And I think it's a rather discreet, because of the rather discreet nature of this topic, I think you should book a one-on-one consultation with me. The last question, Maciej, I would like to ask you is the question on accreditation. What rankings and what accreditations we already have, and what's the process here?
Oh yes, so we are a very accredited university because we are as an American university in Austria, we need to follow both Austrian accreditation rules and New York State. Some of you may know that in the US there is no federal accreditation. You are every university is state registered, and we are a New York State university. You mentioned, however, private accreditation agencies, and among those we obviously have AMBA, which is a program accreditation. The AACSB, we are in the process of getting it, and AACSB is very much contingent on the size of an institution, and we are a very small institution. We have only one cohort, 75 students. So obviously it takes quite a bit of effort for us to have this institutional accreditation that is kind of designed for those large mass producing business schools. But we are in the process of getting it. My sense is that because of how CEU is known, especially for its stance on academic freedom, all the Nobel Prize winners, European Parliament who stood by us, I think there is it's kind of different for us, because it's not as existential for us to have one or another private agency to say we are accredited. We obviously need to be accredited by governments of both countries where we whose regulations we need to follow. We have AMBA as a kind of a hygiene factor, and we are on the way to get AACSB, but we don't emphasize it because we are CEU. I think we are this famous open society university for the world, and I think that's the main credential that we bring on the table, much more than one or another accreditation. I also see another question that I want to take, which is about the outcome of the MBA. This is a very good question. So I would say it's a mix. I think numerically, most people go vertically up in their organizations, but partly because that's for especially for our European and maybe Asian participants, it's kind of the nature of their market. It's not as fluid as, let's say, California, where you change jobs but it's more like people who are who almost are already kind of set to be promoted, and they are more interested in how am I going to succeed once I am promoted. Yes, because like a lot of us are thinking about an MBA in terms of let me get those free magic letters that will help me get promoted. which is true. However, it's also very important to understand that there is a lot of life, professional life, after you get promoted. And you really need to be good in this job. And it's very often the case that you are this amazing specialist who is being promoted to an executive position, and then two things happen to a business. They lose an amazing specialist because now, and they gain a lousy executive. Yes, and we want to avoid that. Yes, we want to avoid that situation in which so a lot of our participants, I have a sense, would probably get promoted anyways because they are just very, very good and very, driven and just like impressive. But my sense is that a lot are kind of investing in this education that doesn't take them away from climbing the ladder because of the format and how it's structured, in order to like fully embrace the opportunities that getting to an executive level brings. Now, I also want to say that there is a numerical minority, but like a very kind of rich group of case studies of people who actually change and like go into entrepreneurship. We have this award-winning innovations lab, an incubator where a lot of people get like multi-million euro financing for their startups after working many, many years as managers and executives in the corporate world. So we have also those stories. We have people moving from public sector maybe to politics. Yes, we have people, of course, changing jobs and using this incredibly tight-knit network to kind of change jobs. People like literally hire each other within the executive MBA class. But still, if you ask me about like the numerically dominant group, I think it's by the choice of our participants to move up in their organizations and embrace the abilities that these promotions and these new responsibilities give, as opposed to being kind of crushed by these new challenges.
The Stockholm audience strongly agreed with what you said, Maciej, so far. I just want to add that I see the outcome on three pillars in a structured way. First of all, there's the network that you can count on, which is always, it's an elite network. And it's always going to be there. Once you have graduated with us, the Alumni Network will accompany you in your life further on. But we have also structured networking with our alumni relations department. So if you're looking for a specific person in a country, in a city, in an industry, or in a profession, you can reach out in a structured setting through alumni relations, which are doing alumni events and stuff like that. But we also have career development where you will receive all career advice that you would need on a structured level, from talking about your CV to guidance in your career as well. You will benefit from all university services as an executive MBA student.
Okay, but now I need to add to your addition, because please don't forget, it's not all about investment. I mean, I don't want to become philosophical, but like, we invest in high school to become good in college, then in college to be good at work, then at work to get into the good MBA. And at the end, what you invest in being a retiree, yes? I mean, there is also a consumption aspect of this. Yes, it's like, it's so much fun to kind of challenge yourself at this kind of mid-career point of life and get this intellectual spa, which we sometimes jokingly call it, yes? And this is so different from those much more vocational schools in Europe, which, focus only on this kind of like, what will I get from it kind of in my job, which is very important. And we have all those things and we tick all those boxes and we have very successful alumni. But I think because we are this part of this open society university, we give you a little more. Yes, people come back to CEU. We have this course offering for alumni, so people can come back in the summer, even after they graduate. And people come back. Yes, people want to be part of this, conversation. And so, you know, I sometimes hear from executive fellows that, like, you know, we compete with other executive MBA programs, but we also compete with things like climbing Kilimanjaro. Yes, I mean, it's like we are a really good kind of moment when you can reflect on your career, when you can see the big picture, when you can get challenged with really top minds like, you know, Sofia. I mean, you can just imagine how much, you know, richness in like discussions you have if you put a, you know, kind of a world-class scholar like her and, you know, 25 executives. So I think we shouldn't also, we should not forget this aspect of this. Yes, I mean, the world is so uncertain. We need to also enjoy life. Yes, not only invest in the future.
Those are the perfect closing remarks, Maciej. Thank you very much. In view of the time, I would like to thank everybody here in Stockholm and for everybody who joined us online through Zoom for joining us tonight. Thank you, Sofia. Thank you, Maciej. Thank you, Daniele, for joining us tonight. And feel free to book one consultation with me for further advice. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.